The reckless nature of humanity comes in many forms, and screwing with the spirit world seems to be no exception, especially when it comes to the Ouija board, as I have found story after story, each coming with a warning. Though instead of scaring people off, the stories of others' misfortunes seem to be a tempting treat to spiritual daredevils. Here are 7 more stories of people who dared to mess with the Ouija board. Enjoy. Last year, my best friend and I decided to experiment with a Ouija board, just to see if it worked. We made our own out of paper and used a regular drinking glass as a pointer, so we were pretty skeptical. We were in for a shock. It took a while for the board to warm up, but once it did, it became apparent that we were surrounded by relatives who had passed away. The glass moved extremely slowly, and there was nothing scary being said or done. Halfway through our session, 2 of our other friends came bursting into the room, laughing and joking. Once they calmed down, we got back to the board. This time, the glass moved extremely fast. We could hardly keep our fingers on it. It started spelling out names and words without us even asking questions. The words spelled out included murder and lust. We ended the session immediately. After that, everything went back to normal for a few days. But then I started waking up at 3 a.m. every night with an unexplainable feeling of dread. This waking up continued for a few weeks, and I started becoming depressed for no reason. One night at about 1 in the morning, my friend was walking me home. As we were walking up the road, he claimed he saw a black figure of a man leaning on a fence, staring at us. We laughed and joked about the place being haunted. We did used to hear bells chiming every night on that road. That night I woke up again, but this time I was being pinned face down on my bed by what felt like a man. I tried to struggle, but I couldn't move. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. He started speaking in my ear, but I didn't know what he said. Then he was gone. I hid under my covers like that was going to help, and soon fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, I chalked it up to being a nightmare, even though it felt so real. A few days later, we had family visiting. My grandma, who claims to be very perceptive, came in and said she felt there was a presence in the house. My mom said she thought so too, ever since I had messed with the Ouija board in my bedroom. But she didn't think it was harmful. My grandmother disagreed and said she thought it was evil. As they were arguing, I began to get the same dreadful feeling I had so many other nights, and I began to feel something was wrong. It felt as though I was being pulled into a tunnel further and further away from the room I was in. I tried to explain this to my mother. I didn't feel right, but I couldn't make myself talk or move. It felt as though something was trying to control me. I finally managed to make myself talk, but I screamed it. "There's something wrong with me!" The next thing I knew, my sister was beside me, hugging me, and I was crying and shaking uncontrollably. My father said I had what looked like some kind of seizure. We had a priest come and bless the house. While he was doing this, all of the pipes in the house made a huge screaming noise. It didn't stop until he finished the prayer. After that, everything went back to normal. But I still cannot explain what happened to me. One afternoon, some friends and I decided to make a homemade Ouija board. We tried it out a couple of times, but nothing seemed to happen. A few weeks passed, and a friend who lived with me at the time and I were looking at some photos of us at a club on my computer. We started to talk about how some orbs appeared only around us in the pictures. Then we got on the subject of ghosts. She got up from the computer and went to sit on the couch with my brother. I got up and walked toward them. As I did, my computer screen suddenly shut off and turned back on. Then the light next to the couch faded and turned a dark red color. Everyone in the room got the chills. We shrugged it off until a few days later. I had lost $100 that I swore I put in my dresser drawer. My mom and I looked everywhere around the house, including countless times in the drawer. Then, out of nowhere, my mom found my money in the same drawer, on top of everything in it. I was starting to think that we attracted a ghost through the Ouija board, but had nothing to prove it yet. One morning, my favorite stuffed animal was missing. I thought maybe someone was playing a prank on me, because I knew I put it in my mom's room next to the bed. I looked everywhere, and still could not find it. I asked my friend, who was in the shower, if she moved it. Of course she hadn't. I became so frustrated. I knew it had to be because of something paranormal, because these things did not occur until we made the Ouija board. I decided to take the Ouija board to the dumpster and get rid of it for good. When I walked back inside, my friend was out of the shower and said, "I found your stuffed animal." I asked, "Where was it?" "Oh, I saw it when I got out of the shower. It was right next to the door in the empty laundry basket." My heart dropped. But nothing strange has happened since. When I was 11 and my sister was 12, she decided to try a Ouija session with a little self-made Ouija board. It had self-made cards, which the letters were drawn on, a table, and a glass. She and two of her friends were in the living room of our little apartment. My mother had had a Ouija experience when she was young, and she was fine with my curious sister's idea, and she took me and my little brother into the kitchen so we didn't disturb my sister. We waited in there for several minutes. I stared lazily at the door to the corridor. The door was mostly glass, and I could see everything that was going on behind it. Then I saw a person walk past the kitchen. He could have only come from the living room, and seemingly was heading for the exit. I was puzzled. First, this man was pitch black and as tall as an ordinary grown-up. Secondly, there was no audible sound of the living room door or footsteps. He could not have been there. I brushed it off. I believed my mind was playing tricks on me. My little brother, who was sitting across from me, asked, "Did you see that shadow too?" I was astonished, and we shared our impressions. Shortly after that, my sister and her friends came into the kitchen and stated that the session just ended because the spirit left. This was the start of paranormal activity around us. Even as we moved on to another house, it went on. Because of my sister's innocent curiosity in the Ouija board, our home became haunted. It started in most cases when it got dark and our parents went to sleep, so they never witnessed anything and thought we were kind of nuts. It was hard. Lights switched on when my sister and I headed for a dark room. That was actually polite of the spirit. Many things from shadows to lights going on and off, knocks on the doors that flew open, to footsteps and cold spots. There was also an extremely nasty smell in one of the bathrooms. It came without warning and quickly left. It was clear that this was no normal smell that you could imagine existing in the bathroom. It was like something foul had lain in the tub for a long time. One time, something pushed on my mattress from beneath while I was lying on it and reading a comic. When we were 16 and 15, it all ended because we started to ignore every unnatural occurrence. We had no nerve or power left to stand any more of this game. Fortunately, the spirits cooperated, and I haven't seen or felt any paranormal activity since. When I was 12 and had just started the 7th grade, I had a combination of 2 types of paranormal things happen. It was a Saturday afternoon and I was bored. My best friend Becca was over. We took out the Ouija board I got last Christmas. I had asked the board, what was I in my past life? I was joking, thinking that these things didn't really exist. The board started to spell out, Rebecca Lynn Peltzer Miller was there. That's all it said. We tried asking another question. Will I meet anyone else in my past life here? It spelled out yes. We asked who. The board proceeded to spell out Vincent Daniel Douglas. 2 years passed, and I had met no Vincent Douglas. I just joined the musical Annie, and you guessed it, the guy I acted with was named Danny Douglas. It was very strange. We had never met before, but I felt like we had known each other all of our lives. That was when I remembered the forgotten Ouija board. So I asked him if Danny was his real name. He laughed and said that his first name was Vincent, a family name that had been passed down through generations. I was definitely shocked. When I was 15 in a city near Perth, Western Australia, at the time, several strange things were happening, which I believed had to do with a seance my friend and I had played around with. Nothing much exciting happened during the seance, and to be honest, I thought my friend was pushing the glass. Never much thought of it, until I began waking up at 3:15 a.m. every morning, with a genuine sensation of total terror. I would lie awake in my bed with the covers over my head as I had a strange sensation of being watched and was afraid of what was in my room with me. I would lie there like that until the sun came up. I was always terrified of looking in a certain direction, and upon inspection, I found the glass which had been used in the seance. This took me by surprise, as the glass had been disposed of, so I was certain that the glass was the reason for my sleepless nights. I once again disposed of the glass. However, I kept experiencing the same feelings, and once again, upon inspection, came across the same glass I had already thrown in the garbage twice. This time, I was determined to get rid of it, so I took it outside and smashed it on the ground. I continued waking up at 3:15 a.m. to the minute every night without fail, and I started seeing strange dark shadows. The shadows started as perfect black balls, which would circle my room, then seemed to disappear through my window. I put this off to paranoia and lack of sleep, and simply tried to ignore it and go back to sleep, still with my head under the covers. Other people started noticing the shadow too, and at normal waking hours, saying that the end of the house where my room was seemed a bit creepy. Gradually, the shadows seemed to get bigger, but I continued to ignore them until one night. The family dog woke me again at 3:15 a.m. He was sitting next to my bed, and he was making a crying sound. I figured the dog needed to go out, so I got up and let him outside. As soon as I was back in bed, the dog was at my window, squeaking and carrying on. So I got back up and let him back inside. The dog then followed me to my room, and once again, sat by my bed, whimpering. I took him back outside, and even though he sat at my window still crying, I made him stay out there for a bit, because I didn't want him coming back in and waking me back up. I eventually gave in and let the dog back inside. The bathroom light was on, letting light flood the hallway as I walked back to my room, where the dog started growling. I moved closer to the bathroom door so the dog could see it was me, as I was worried he was growling at my shadow. I called him up to me, as he was still growling, and said, "Hey, it's only me. Come here, what's the matter?" The dog walked slowly toward me, still growling, and sat next to my leg, growling at something behind me. In a flash, my thoughts raced to, "Oh my God, there's someone in the house," and turned around and started running down the hallway. What I saw was something that has never left my mind, and something no one has ever believed when I have told them. I saw what seemed like a huge bird. It had huge outstretched wings that would have touched the roof and almost the floor. Its body ended where the wings did, and neither seemed to touch the ground. As it followed me down the hallway, the wings stayed outstretched, and it seemed to glide as it moved. I did notice a small head in between the wings, but no features that I could recall, and the head seemed hooded rather than round and connected to the body without a neck. The creature seemed more shadow than of flesh, and as much as I have tried to put it down to my own shadow, I am certain that what I experienced and saw was real, and could have in no way been my own shadow. I remember mostly the wings and the enormity of them as they towered over me, and how it moved as it followed after me, until it slipped into another room. I'm not sure what happened to it after this, but my sister, who was older and didn't believe in anything paranormal, had some strange experiences involving a black shadow and some kind of sleep paralysis, where she was surrounded by a bunch of people laughing at her as the black shadow circled over top. I've been using the Ouija board for almost 7 years now, and have had very few bad experiences, and none that I would ever consider evil. I do have one particular entity that I talk to pretty regularly named Wiz. He claims to be my spirit guide. He also claims to be my brother from a previous life around 700 AD in Scandinavia. I haven't been able to get any winning lottery numbers from him yet, but he is decent at telling me about events yet to come, at least to an extent. Sometimes he would tell me what he thought I wanted to hear, but there is the occasional nugget he does give me. Before May of 2008, my wife had never used a Ouija in a serious attempt to contact the other side. After convincing her that it was safe, in May 2008 in Columbia, South Carolina, she and I managed to make contact with Wiz. Wiz and I were old friends by that time, and although she had heard me talk about him, she had never talked to him herself. Wiz told us she would get pregnant and would be due in June of '09. By October, I had nearly forgotten what he had said, my notes tucked away along with other notes from the novel I'm working on. We found out at the end of October that she was pregnant, and at that time, the first doctor's appointment she was due July 1st. During the second doctor's visit, the doctor adjusted the due date to June 23rd. About a week later, I was going through my novel notes and found one from the Ouija conversation, and I nearly fell out of my chair. Wiz has given me the whole backstory for my novel. My life in the 700s in Scandinavia, and has, I feel, kept watch over me as I work on it. My novel is currently in HarperCollins' online slush pile, but Wiz has told me that HarperCollins will not like it, but it will be picked up by another publisher. Whether he's right about that or not, I don't know. Whether or not he's right about anything, I don't know. Whether or not I'm just reading too much into coincidences, I don't know. Is it my subconscious that has told me these things? I don't know. But if it is, wouldn't that be an amazing thing in and of itself? I was 12 years old when this happened. It was 1978. My mother had bought me a Ouija board, thinking it was a good game we could play together. So one evening, while Dad was at work, he was a coal miner. We got out the board, lit a candle, and put it in the middle of the table. We placed our fingers lightly on the planchette. Mom asked if there was anyone there that wanted to speak to us. I was giggling. She asked again. The planchette then moved to yes. I told Mom she was moving it, and she said she was not. Mom asked, "Who are you?" The planchette then went to each letter and spelled Jackson. We did not know anyone by the name of Jackson, first or last name. Mom then asked, "Are you a good spirit?" The planchette moved to yes, and then to no. Mom asked, "How did you die?" The planchette did not move from the middle of the board. At this point, I was getting scared. So Mom said, "Since you are not going to tell us, we are going to say goodbye now." The planchette slid to no. Mom said, "We have to go." The planchette then went to goodbye. We took our fingers off of the planchette, and it was sitting in the middle of the board. It then flew off the board, and the round plastic piece where the middle pointer is was cracked. Mom put it all back in the box and put it up in my closet. Where we lived, the floor was close to the ground, and my mom was at the end of the house. That night, there was a growling sound coming up through the floor in the corner of my room. I went and got Mom. She came in, and it stopped. My mom smoked cigarettes, and that night, her cigarettes smelled like sulfur. She said they tasted like sulfur too. My dad said he could not smell it or taste it, but I could smell the sulfur strong. 3 nights later, the growling started up in the same corner of my room. I again went and got Mom. Dad was home, and Mom told him to get the flashlight and go out and look. While the growling was happening, Dad came in and said that nothing was under there. My mom proceeded to yell at it and tell it to stop. It got louder and sounded more like a guttural growl, like it was going to come through the floor after my mother. At some point, it finally stopped that night. The next morning, my mom felt sick. We took her temperature, and it was 102. Dad took her to the hospital, and they admitted her. She was diagnosed as having an infection through her entire body. She was in the hospital for a week. The doctor told my dad that if he had waited one more day to bring her in, she would have died. The entire time she was in the hospital, my room and the entire house was quiet. My mom and I truly believe the spirit of Jackson died from an infection in his blood and was never treated for it. That is my first and last experience with a Ouija board. My father threw it away at the dump, and I continue to warn others about the dangers of having and using a Ouija board. It seems no one is afraid to tempt their fate with the board. And while I'm not trying to make you play with one, I would ask, if you're going to, at least share your story with us and email me at DuchessDark676@gmail.com. See you next time. But seriously, don't play with the Ouija board. It's just stupid.